Hello everyone, today our group is going to present various aspects of the courtroom scene from A Tale of Two Cities. As the first speaker, I will introduce the plot summary of Part 3 based on our class material. The scene begins with the emotional testimony of Dr. Manette. He suffered a long imprisonment and cannot fully remember the past because of his mental trauma. After this, the prosecution brings out a witness. This witness claims he saw in the prison Charles Daney collecting secret information near a military base. However, a dramatic turning point happens. A gentleman in the court, Sidney Carton, writes a note and passes it to the defense lawyer, Mr. Shriver. Mr. Shriver then asks the witness to look closely at both Mr. Carton and the prisoner. To everyone's surprise, the two men look incredibly alike. Because they look so similar, the lawyer argued that the witness could easily have mistaken the prisoner's identity. This smart strategy completely destroyed the witness's credibility, making the government's argument useless. In conclusion, this scene highlights how Sidney Carton's sharp eyes and his look-alike appearance saved Darnay from a deadly death penalty. Ultimately, the government's case falls apart as the jury lives to make their decision. To truly understand the deeper meaning of this trial, we need to look at a few important words from the text. First, we have captivity, which describes the painful state of being kept as prisoner without freedom. Next, we see the word faculties. This refers to a person's natural mental or physical ability, which can easily be damaged by hard time. When someone suffers like this, they often need to restore their life, meaning to bring things back to their original normal condition. Finally, the garrison appears, which means a group of soldiers stationed to defend the place. These words are key to unlock the true emotion behind the courtroom drama. Now, let's move on to the next slide to look at some more keywords. First, a dockyard is a place where ships are built and repaired, and the final result or outcome of the situation is called upshot. Next, we have two contrasting words. While gallantries can mean acts of bravery or polite manner, an unblushing trafficker describes a completely different character, someone who shamelessly buys and sells illegal goods. When these different people meet in the courts, the lawyer starts cross-examining them, which means questioning the opposite witnesses to check if they are lying. During this tense process, getting the truth feels as hard as an extraction, which is the act of pulling someone out by force. Finally, we see how the story deals with debauched behavior, meaning actions that are immoral, and how the law forbids or strictly prohibited certain choices. Understanding these words will help us see the sharp contrast between good and evil in the novel.
Now let's look at the specific literary techniques Dickens uses in the scene, focusing on grammar and sentence structure. First, Dickens uses a special technique called subject-verb inversion in the phrase, "Lastly came my lord himself." Instead of using a normal word order like "lastly my lord himself came," he intentionally places the verb before the subject. Why did he do this? This inversion is used to heighten dramatic tension. It clearly signals the solemn and heavy entrance of the judge, making the audience feel his immense power. Second, the entire scene is built on an extended metaphor comparing the court argument to a suit of clothes. We can see the lawyers and the judge twisting and fitting the evidence onto the jury, just like fitting garments. This visualizes the trial as a cynical process of tailoring. This means that the evidence is continuously altered until it finally becomes grave clothes for the prisoner. Through this metaphor, Dickens shows that the court is not looking for truth, but is simply manufacturing a death sentence. Building on these devices, let's look at how Dickens uses satire to criticize the unfairness of the justice system. First, let's look at irony. In this trial, dishonest witnesses like Barsad and Clyde are called patriots. This is highly ironic because they are actually paid spies and corrupt scoundrels. By calling them patriots, Dickens exposes the deep hypocrisy and unreliability of the state's witnesses. Second, the metaphor of the suit of clothes shows how lawyers and judges manipulate evidence to fit their own arguments instead of finding facts. Third, Dickens uses symbolism with the great flies buzzing inside a court. These flies represent the crowd of spectators, creating a dark atmosphere of death and assumed guilt. It shows that the public already treats the prisoner as guilty before the trial is even over. When we connect these techniques, we can see a clear flow at the bottom of the slide. First, the legal system is influenced by prejudice. Second, because of this, the prisoner is treated as guilty before being proven guilty. Ultimately, Dickens uses satire to show that the court values appearance over truth and justice.
Dickens shows us the legal system driven by the prejudice and fear, using patriotism as a weapon. We usually associate patriotism with love for one country. However, in this courtroom scene, Dickens shows us how the government and selfish people manipulate it to fuel fear. First, Dickens revealed that being patriot is often just a mask for criminals. During a trial, Mr. Stryver exposed that the state's main witness, John Bussard. Stryver argued that the patriot Bussard is actually a hired spy, a traitor, and one of the worst scoundrels on the earth. It's highly ironic that the government relies on corrupt people who hide behind the flag just to condemn an innocent man. Second, the government exploits public fear to control the masses. We see this courtroom absurd reaction to a simple story about George Washington. When Lucy Manette testified, the prisoner once joked that George Washington might become as famous as King George III. The judge glared at this heresy. This shows fragile nationalism where even a light-hearted joke is treated as a dangerous threat. Ultimately, this fake patriotism hides true injustice. The abuse of patriotism is part of the much larger issue. In A Tale of Two Cities, Dickens criticized the unfairness of the entire legal and political system. The courtroom is not the place where the truth is found. Instead, it's a place where evidence is twisted, and public fear is controlled, and judgment is based on the bias. He especially criticized how power cares more about the appearance than actual justice. The lawyer and the judge keep arguing back and forth, making the trial feel like a theater performance rather than a serious search for truth. Through this sharp mockery, Dickens shows that the law often protects the perfect instead of the innocent. He also shows that the political opinion can ruin the human reason. Even a harmless joke about George Washington is treated as a crime. This suggests that people care more about defending blind national pride than thinking fairly. In this way, Dickens' criticism is not just a complaint. It's his powerful way to exposing hypocrisy, prejudice, and the abuse of authority. And this concludes our group presentation. Thank you for listening.